Well, the controversy surrounding Guantanamo Bay continues. This time, questions are being raised about what happens at military commissions at the secretive base. The commissions were authorized by President Bush after the 9/11 attacks as a way to try non-U.S. citizens accused of terrorism. The relatively new process has some asking if the government is making up the rules as they go along. Recently, the commission had pretrial hearings for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and other 9/11 terror suspects. Some issues debated include whether suspects could testify about being tortured while they were detained, and a 40-second delay between what's happening in the courtroom and what the media hears. For more on the military commission, I'm joined by Kevin Gostola. He is a blogger for Fire Dog Lake. Kevin, welcome. So first want to start off with one of the arguments that the court heard, and that is whether the 5 defendants should be allowed to testify about being tortured. The prosecution says this kind of testimony should be blocked because, quote, their thoughts, emotions, and memories are classified information. It's an interesting argument, to say the least. What do you think about it?
I think if you're going to really put this in perspective, it's just a few shades lower than making somebody go into a courtroom and testify that 2 + 2 = 5, because essentially what they're saying is that they have control over a person's thoughts and experiences. And I don't think any government should be able to say they control any person's mind. And so it's a really abhorrent argument that they're putting forward. And I think it's a legally tenuous argument. The ACLU opposes the argument that the United States is putting forward in the courtroom here. And so I think that people should really consider what it looks like. The system is supposed to be fair, and I don't know if you can call it fair if people who were tortured by CIA interrogators aren't allowed to share those experiences in the courtroom.
All right. The government would argue that classified information should stay classified, presumably because making it public could jeopardize national security. What do you think about that?
Well, if you think of why they're putting this argument forward, it's really to protect the interrogators that were involved in the torture of these terror suspects or prisoners that are at Guantanamo. It's to protect people from finding out details on the methods. They call them intelligence methods. Well, these methods are what Cheney called enhanced interrogation techniques, or torture. So it's really all about concealing torture. It's really so that you and I and others who want to scrutinize and talk about what the government is doing aren't able to have that conversation.
All right, you say the goal here is to conceal torture and what really does go on there at Guantanamo Bay. Now, of course, this raises a lot of issues in terms of oversight and transparency in a place that is already has raised a lot of controversy for being shrouded in secrecy.
But it actually has more transparency than, to compare it to another proceeding I cover regularly. Not to go too far off on a tangent, but I cover PFC Bradley Manning, the soldier accused of releasing classified information to WikiLeaks. And in this case, what I can say is, as a reporter, I'm able to read transcripts of the proceedings and know exactly what is going on in the courtroom. So I would say it does have some transparency, and that came through the efforts and actions of Congress. But you're correct that here we don't really know what's going on with some of these prisoners.
All right. So this whole argument of not being able to testify about your torture experience because it relates to their emotions, it's an interesting argument. What kind of legal standing is there behind it? And beyond legal, at the very least, it seems like there's some moral issues at play here.
I mean, to add some more to what I'm saying here, if the ACLU is opposing it, I would suggest that there's a nice line of legal theory behind the fact that they are opposing it. And I think what we really should focus on here is the fact that there haven't been any people who have tortured anyone held accountable. Nobody has gone to jail. Not a single person has gone to jail. And I wrote about this, and one of the things that I mentioned in writing about these commissions is that there is someone that people should know about. His name is John Kiriakou. He is a person who blew the whistle on torture when Bush was in power and said that the CIA had an official policy of torture. He was recently convicted and took a plea deal because he was, the government says he exposed a covert officer and named him. Multiple human rights organizations are believed to have known this person. And so at the end of the day, what people really need to understand is that there aren't any torturers who are in prison at all who have had their lives wrecked. But there is one gentleman who is going to be going to prison for possibly 2 or more years. And he himself has had his entire life wrecked. His family has been put into shambles and driven into poverty because of what he did.
All right. Kevin, we don't have very much time left, but I do want to ask you, these military commissions, relatively new, created after 9/11, they give the executive branch much more power than normal. Do you think it's giving too much power to the president?
I think people should really reflect on the fact that this military commission system is a second legal system. It was believed before that Obama went ahead and had these sort of court proceedings that you could do these in federal courts. And there is absolutely no evidence to show that they shouldn't be happening in federal courts currently.
All right, Kevin, we are out of time, but really appreciate you coming on the show. That was Kevin Gostola. He is a blogger for Fire Dog Lake.